Hey guys, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Glad to have you back. In today's episode, we're going to give you 5 questions to ask someone that you just met. So, the goal here is to try to expand our circle, whether it be personal acquaintances, professional acquaintances, whatever the case may be. You can find yourself in situations where you're around people you've never met before, a potential really good friend, really good associate, really good business partner, spouse, you don't know. Could be right there in that circle of people that you're around. And if you don't make an attempt to try to get to know those people, you never know. You could be missing out on something huge. You could be missing out on jerks too. Like you don't know who people are or how they are. And so, what we want to do is give you some questions that will give them a chance to kind of talk to you and tell you a little bit about themselves so you can make a judgment on whether this is someone you want to get to know even better or whether you can politely decline and just move on to someone else or end the conversation and move on with your life. So it's fun and interesting to meet new people, right? When you think back to when you were a kid, you were meeting new people all the time because you were put in situations where you had to meet new people all the time. Every year in elementary school, at least where I went, it was elementary school, middle school, you started changing classes. In high school, you changed classes. But even then, you had different classes. You met different people in different classes. And in my school that I went to, the grade school, like we're all still kind of keep tabs of each other on Facebook. Are we like lifelong friends and we have Sunday dinner together? No, but we're all still friendly. Those are people that we've known for decades of our life, and we all enjoy seeing each other do well, seeing the successes, seeing the families, seeing the lives that they've built for themselves. And we'd be missing out all that if we just sat in silence and stared forward, right? So, as you're a kid, when you're a kid, you're in those situations all the time, and it's just generic, very easy. You play sports with people, you have classes with people, you have activities with people, and you get to know the people that you're around. Plus, you have many less inhibitions when you were a kid than you do now as an adult. You're much less cautious than you were now. And you really didn't think, oh, I'm going to look stupid. I don't want them to make fun of me. You just kind of generically or organically started to get to know people because you were around them a lot. Now, as adults, we tend to get into routines. If we think about it, people don't change jobs that much generally. I mean, let's say you change jobs every 2 years. That means for 2 years, you develop a routine around that job. We tend to eat at the same restaurants over and over again. If we find a place we like, we stick with it. We don't generally say, oh, I went there once, it was awesome. I'm never going there again. I'm going to try a bunch of other places. Go to the same grocery stores over and over and over again, right? So life falls into a routine. That means you're in situations much less frequently where you're around other people or meeting new people. And it makes it more difficult sometimes. So when we do meet new people, a lot of times we haven't practiced those techniques and we're out of practice on getting a conversation started with folks. We worry about saying the wrong thing, putting people off, or offending people before we can get to know them. So, especially in today's world where if you want to if you talk to someone about the Second Amendment, talk to someone about abortion, talk to someone about politics in general, and it can be in some instances a very polarizing and off-putting conversation. Now, we don't subscribe to that. I like talking to people who have different views than me because they think about the world differently than I do. And I like to learn from them and think about how they think about things. I can listen to their opinions, I can listen to their thoughts without agreeing with them, but I can validate them and I can accept their opinions. That's fine. I think you learn a lot by doing those things. But first conversation right off the bat, probably not something you want to do. Bring up some real difficult, controversial subject, right? So those are some things to keep in mind. So a few things to keep in mind as it relates to when you first are around. Keep it casual. You don't want to be a stage 5 clinger and hey, you're my best friend, or hey, let's talk about something really deep and meaningful and controversial. That's a really tough way to get to know people because they're going to be guarded. They're not going to tell you everything they think. They might not even tell you the truth. And so you want to keep it casual. You want to give them kind of a welcoming and a warm environment in which they can express their thoughts and opinions. They can hear from you some of your thoughts and opinions, some of the things you like, some of the things you don't like. And you do it in a very low risk way. So keep it very casual. Observe your surroundings, right? If you're in church, you probably should not stand up and scream that you're pro-life or pro-choice. I mean, sorry. If you are at an NRA convention, you probably don't want to talk about the gun ban that you're working on. Nothing wrong with those things. That's fine. If that's what you believe in, that's what you believe in, and good for you. We support it 100%. What we're saying is if you want to get to know people and you want to hear what they have to say, being real adversarial is probably not the way to go. And being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian is probably not the way to go. Just look around where you're at, right? Just like if you're at a pride parade, you probably don't want to stand up and say, there's only two genders, right? You may believe that, and that's okay if you believe that. But you got to be respectful of other people and give them space to share their opinions and be who they are. And then the third thing there is listen actively. So when someone is talking, really try to listen to them. Working in retail, you run across all sorts of different people, and we want them all to come shop at our store. So I don't want to be off-putting to anybody. So when I talk to someone who may have outlandish or controversial topics that they talk about or thoughts that they express, I'm okay with that. I can listen to those things. It doesn't mean I have to agree with them. It doesn't mean I have to get in an argument with them. It doesn't mean that I have to try to point by point refute what they're telling me. I can actively listen and just make a comment and say, that's really interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. I didn't agree with them. I didn't say they were wrong. I didn't say they were smart. I didn't say they were dumb. I said that was interesting. That's a good non-committal way, and it shows that you listened to what they said, and it shows that you valued the conversation with them. So that's a really good way of handling those situations. So with all of that said, here's our 5 questions that you can ask someone to give them a chance to tell you what they're about. And remember, everyone likes talking about themselves. I had 3 boys, so I told my sons, if you want to be successful with women, ask them questions about themselves, then shut your mouth. And by the way, women works the same exact way with men. Ask men questions about themselves and shut your mouth. I think inherently women have a higher emotional IQ and know that already. So you really target those comments more towards men because we're kind of morons when it comes to that stuff, just in general, if I'm painting with a broad brush, and I am. But if you ask open-ended questions, an open-ended question is something you can't say yes or no to. Do you like tacos? That's a yes or no question. Yes, I do. No, I don't. What's your favorite part of a taco? What's your favorite thing about tacos? That's an open-ended question. So I'm not say more than yes or no to respond to your question. So you want to ask open-ended questions and then actively listen to their responses and engage in the conversation where appropriate. But I would argue that you want the ratio of that person talking to you talking to probably be 2-to-1, maybe 3-to-1. You want to hear what they have to say. You want to give them a chance to express how they think and feel before you start running your mouth and interjecting yourself into the conversation. There'll be plenty of time down the road if the relationship develops to share your thoughts and opinions. And if not, you'll get to learn a whole bunch about them, and you can make a determination if it's someone that you want to learn more about and spend more time with, or again, politely extricate yourself from the situation and move on. That's okay too. But you have a good chance of getting off on the right foot with them if you use this approach or use these 5 questions. Question number 1. What's your favorite way to spend a weekend? Open-ended question. Gives them a chance to talk about the things that they enjoy doing. You'll probably learn a little bit about their hobbies, a little bit about what they like the most, what they dislike. It gives them a chance to kind of respond to all of those things. It avoids the work conversation, so you don't have to listen in case you run across an insurance salesman. So he's not trying to sell you a whole life policy. I don't know. Maybe they're out saying, I like to knock on doors and sell whole life insurance policies on the weekend. You might be in for a long conversation if that's the response you get. But generally, in the vast majority of situations, you're going to hear about activities you like to do: sailing, fishing, hiking, sports, reading, gardening, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. You get to learn about them, and it gives them a chance to tell you about who they are. And it makes them feel important. It makes them feel cared about. It makes them feel noticed. It makes them feel listened to. So that's a great conversation starter. When you're just getting to know someone. How do you like to spend your weekend? That works even at work, by the way, to kind of personalize and develop a relationship. And people buy from and do business with people they like and trust. And so the more you can make that a sticky relationship instead of just transactional, just about the business, the better chance you have of developing a long-term customer. So that's our first question. Second question, one thing you are passionate about. So some people will screen this and they won't tell you what they're actually passionate about. They'll pick something that they're passionate about, but maybe not their number one. But you'll still get to learn a little bit about that. And so if they say a subject, it doesn't matter what it is. What's one thing that you're passionate about? And let's just say that they say hiking. You can say, I've never been hiking. Tell me more about that. They will launch into great explanation about what they like about hiking, how they do it, what equipment they take with them, where they hike, where they don't like to hike, where they've been hiking before, trips they've taken for hiking. All that stuff can come from just that one question. What's one thing you're passionate about? Plus, it stays away from negative. Not what's one thing you hate? That's not a good question because you're going to get a lot of vitriol and you're going to get, plus, people, it really is kind of off putting to them and they don't necessarily want to tell you what they dislike that much, but they love talking about the things that they like. So, what's one thing you're passionate about? That's a great question. A similar question: what are your favorite hobbies? So, and that works almost exactly the same way. That is what is one thing you're passionate about. What are your favorite hobbies? What do you like to do? That's where you're going to hear about hiking, sailing, fishing, sports, gardening, whatever it is that that person enjoys. Reading, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not You're not asking them so you can judge how they spend their weekends. You're not asking them so they can judge what their hobbies are or what they're passionate about. You're asking so you can get to know that person a little bit and you're creating a bond between you and that other person because they're getting a chance to tell you about themselves and what they like and how they think and how they feel. So, both of those questions: what's one thing you're passionate about? What are your favorite hobbies? Great way to start off a conversation and get people to open up and talk to you a little bit. Question number 4, along the same lines, you'll notice a trend here. What is a good book or movie you've recently read or seen? That gives someone a chance. I would tell you, I was out walking my dog a couple of weeks ago, and I walked past the house. It was night, so it was dark. And I walked past the house, and there was two guys that were in a very serious conversation about DC comic movies. Like they were in the weeds on these movies. I'm not a comic book movie guy. I don't have any idea what they were talking about. But I can tell you that those two guys shared a passion about DC comic movies because their conversation was into the minutia, the way the characters were, things they'd like to see them do more of, things they didn't like about the way certain movies went. I can hear all this as I'm walking my dog for probably 30, 45 seconds of the conversation. And I found it super interesting that these two guys are out in the dark. One of them's waiting to get into his truck to leave, and they are deep in this conversation about DC movies. One of the things I love the movie Unforgiven, a Clint Eastwood Western. I think it was 1991, somewhere in there. It won the Oscar for Best Picture. I love that movie because of how it really shows human nature. And the thing I always tell people about that movie is you should watch that movie and tell me who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. And I won't say much more than that because if you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to ruin it for you. But they tell that story without a lot of dialogue, and they tell that story so well. And I dare you to tell me which character is the good guy and which character is the bad guy. Because the people in each role, the person in the good guy role has terrible things that they've done. The person in the bad guy role does terrible things in the film. And so I love it. And to me, the movie really says at your core, you are a certain way and you can't change who that is. You might be able to fight it off and mask it for a long time, but it's going to come back out eventually under the right circumstances. So, or the wrong circumstances, which will make sense if you watch the movie. So, talking about books, talking about movies. My wife talks to me about books she reads all the time. I probably know more about 5 or 6 books that she's read than people that have actually read the books because she talks about them after she reads them and she gets a ton of value out of those books. So, that's someone that I know better than anybody in the world. And I've spent more than half my life with this person. And she talks about books. Like it's a great way to bond with people, asking them about movies, asking them about books, and engaging them in conversations around those subjects. And then the last one is, what is your favorite thing about where you live? And we like this one because we used it a lot. We've moved around a lot. So originally from Oregon, but have lived in 7 states. So I personally have lived in Oregon, California, Nevada, New Hampshire, Ohio, Missouri, and Texas. So is that 7 or 8? I can't. I've lost track, but I've lived in all those places. And so getting to know what those places were like, we would ask people, "What do you like to do? Are you from here? How long have you been here? What do you do in your spare time? What are some good things for us to do with our family while we're here? And then when our kids got older, it was just us. But what's your favorite thing about where you live? Like I've lived in all sorts of different places: East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. Being from the West Coast, I have an affinity for mountains, and I have not been anywhere else. If you get east of the Rocky Mountains, there's no real mountains. People call them mountains, but they're not really mountains. Not like we're used to out west. I always say Mount Hood from Portland, where I'm from, it's about 12,000 feet tall, and it's not uncommon for people to die on Mount Hood. And so I always tell them, how many people have died on Mount whatever? It's not a real mountain. If people aren't dying on it, it's not a real mountain. That's the way I think about it. But that's a unique experience where from about where I'm from, and I haven't found that experience anywhere else. One time when I was in Miami with my wife, we had an off day. I was there for work, but we had an off day, and we rented a car and we drove all the way down to Key West, the southernmost point in Florida. And actually, Hawaii is a little bit further south, but it's the southernmost point in the continental United States. And it's just such a unique experience. You can't see that anywhere else. So we did it just to experience what it was like. And it was pretty cool to drive down there and see how people live down there and just kind of see the lifestyle and those kinds of things. So there's unique things about every place. Even if you haven't moved around a lot, even if you've lived there your whole life, you may learn something new about the place you live by asking someone else what's their favorite thing about where they live, where you live, where you're at. So I've always found that to be a great question. It's opened a lot of relationships for me. It's opened a lot of opportunities for me. And I think it's a good one to have in the toolkit. So there you go, guys. There's your 5 questions. Don't have to be afraid of strangers. It's not hard to get people to talk. Ask them questions about themselves. Ask them questions about the things they like. And you'll be amazed at what people will tell you. Just ask them questions, shut your mouth and listen. And every once in a while, ask another leading question to keep the conversation going if you want to keep it going. So hope you find that useful. I hope you're able to go out and find other folks that you can talk to. Don't forget, life is about experiences and relationships. Money, material possessions, professional success, those are all great. We're not downplaying those at all, but they're a pretty hollow existence if that's all that you have. So life is about experiences and relationships, and hopefully you're able to take these questions, use them to develop new relationships, and enrich your life even further. So that's our episode for today, guys. Don't forget, James puts it up over here. Website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are on there. All of our social media links are on there. We have a newsletter that we publish every weekday that you can subscribe to on there. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you consume it on. Thanks for coming, guys. Really appreciate it. You have a great week, and we will see you next time.